Hello and welcome back to the channel. In today's tutorial I'm going to be sharing with you how to cut and sew this dress with a structured ruffle sleeve. So if this is something you like, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up. So let's dive right into today's video. So to start, here is my pattern paper and I've gone ahead to mark out my basic measurements, which is my shoulder to bust, shoulder to under bust and shoulder to waistline. So we're going to be stopping at our waistline. Next, I'll go ahead to mark my shoulder divided by 2. So after that, I'll come down by 1 inch and I'll go ahead to mark my shoulder slope. From there, I'll find my chest line, which is your bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches. And I'll go ahead to rule a line at that point. After I'm done marking that, I'll go ahead to mark what I have at the shoulder, which is 7 inches. Now, I'll connect and draw a straight line. After that, I'll go ahead to divide what I have here into 2 and I'll come in by ½ inch. And at the chest line area, I'm going to mark my bust circumference divided by 4 and I'll go ahead to mark. Now I'll place my curve drill connecting from that point to the armhole and to the upper part of my shoulder. After that, the next step is to go ahead to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2. And I will go ahead to mark this all the way to my waistline and I'm going to go ahead to draw a straight line at that point. Now I'll be taking a dart intake of 1 inch at both sides for my pattern. If you're a plus size, you're going to be using 1.5 inches, or if you're a bit busty, you're going to be using 1.5 inches for this part. Now I'm going to connect from the bust down to the under bust, and on the other side also I'm going to connect from the bust down to the under bust. After that, I'll go ahead to use my marker to outline this to make it more visible for you to see, and I'll also draw out the other side. So after I'm done doing this, I'll go ahead to mark the upper part. I'll be marking 1.5 inches after my chest line or above my chest line. You can also use 2 inches if you don't want yours to be too revealing. So I'll also go ahead and mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2 and I'll be taking my dart intake of 1 inch at both sides. So if you're a bit busty or a plus size, you're also going to use 1.5 inches at this point. So I'll go ahead to connect it all the way down and I'm going to use my marker to outline this to make it more visible for you to see. So after I'm done doing this, the next step is to insert my body measurements. I'm going to mark my bust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake I have there. After I'm done marking that, I'll also add my sewing allowance of 1.5 inches. Here, I'll mark my under bust circumference divided by 4, measure the dart intake replaced. So when I was marking this, I forgot to add my sewing allowance, but I will do that later. Here, I'll mark my waist circumference divided by 4, measure this dart intake, replace it, and I'll add my sewing allowance back. So after I'm done doing this, I'll just go ahead and place my ruler and I'll connect from the bust. So while connecting to the bust, that was when I realized that, and I'll go ahead to clean that off. But before cleaning it off, I'll just go ahead and adjust my measurements by adding my sewing allowance. Now I'll just go ahead to connect from the bust down to the under bust, and from the under bust I'll be connecting down to the waistline. So this is what I have for this part right now, and at this point I'll be readjusting it. But before doing that, I'll just go ahead to use my marker to outline my pattern to make it more visible for you to see. So after I'm done connecting that, I'll go ahead to connect from the upper part here. I'll just go ahead and take it down to the armhole. So if you notice, I did not mark a straight line there and I went up by ½ inch. This is to avoid my armhole showing too much or to be too revealing, and I'll just draw a straight line across this part. So at the neckline, I'll be using 2 inches here, and I'll also go ahead to measure that same 2 inches. So that is what I have at this point. And from there, I'll just go ahead and connect to the lower part of my pattern, and I'll be doing that with my ruler. And after I'm done connecting, I'll use my marker to connect these to the 1.5 inches we came up with. So for the upper part, we'll be blending it in with the back sleeve and we'll be cutting out one piece because this sleeve is actually a structured sleeve. So there's a boning at the sleeve before attaching the ruffle to it. So I'll just go ahead and I will cut out the rest of my pattern. So at this point, if you find this tutorial very interesting and educative, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up. So now we'll go ahead to cut out the back pattern. So for the back pattern, here is what I have marked out already, just like we did for the front pattern. The only difference is that I added a zipper allowance of 1.5 inches to the front pattern. And after that, I'll just go ahead and label my pattern before we start. So what I'm going to do first is to go ahead to mark out the dart for this pattern. And to do that, I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple divided by 2. So my nipple to nipple is 7 inches divided by 2. I have 3.5, and I'll go ahead to mark this all the way to the lower part. So after I'm done doing that, I'll just go ahead to draw a straight line and I will connect. I'll mark a dart intake of 1/2 inch at both sides, and I'm going to connect it all the way up. After I'm done connecting that, I'll mark my body measurement. I'll mark my bust circumference divided by 4, and I will add my sewing allowance. Now, at the waistline, I'm going to go ahead to mark my waist circumference divided by 4, measure this dart intake, replace, and add my sewing allowance. You can also go ahead to measure your underbust measurement or mark your underbust measurement here, or you can just leave it this way. Now I'll just go ahead and draw a straight line at this part and use my marker to outline this. So after I'm done doing this, I'm just going to outline the lower part, and now we are going to be taking out the bulginess at the zipper area. So when I was cutting this part, I forgot to also go up with 1/2 inch at my armhole, but I'll be doing that when I'm cutting out. So from the waist, I went in by 1/2 inch. This is to take out the bulginess at the back of the dress, and I will be taking this all the way up. So after I'm done marking that, the next step I'm going to take is to go ahead to outline here. And after I'm done outlining, I'll be coming down by 1/2 inch after my chest line, and I'll be taking it all the way up. So after I'm done taking this up, I'll be marking the neckline of the back pattern. So to do that, I'm going to take the neckline we have in front, mark, and I'll go ahead to bring this down and mark. This is to make sure that I have the same at both sides. And when you're cutting this out, you also want to take note of where your yoke started, or where your sleeve started, sorry, because you're going to be replacing it. So this sleeve, we are going to be cutting it as one, and we're going to be merging it up with the front part. So after that, I will just go ahead and cut off my pattern. So at this point, if you haven't yet subscribed, please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button. So here I'll label my pattern, and I'll cut out the dart and also cut out this part of my sleeve. So this is what I have. I'll label it. So to cut the skirt pattern, this is what I have. And first, I'm going to place my tape starting from my waist measurement, which is 17 inches. So the total length of my dress is 34 plus 1 inch, making it 35. So for the lower part of my skirt, is just a skirt measurement of 18 inches. So after that, I'll go ahead to mark my hip point. So my hip point is 7 inches away from my waistline. For a much taller person, you can go ahead to use 8 inches. So after this, I'm just going to go ahead to draw a straight line all the way connecting to the end. So after I'm done doing this, we'll move over to inserting my measurement. But I'm going to label this as waist, hip, and the other part will be my top length. So at the waistline, I'm going to go ahead to mark my waist circumference divided by 4. I'll add 1 inch because I'll be adding a dart intake there, and go ahead to add 1.5 inches for my sewing allowance. Here I'll mark my hip circumference divided by 4, and I'll go ahead to mark 1.5 inches for my sewing allowance. So what I have here is my hip circumference divided by 4, which is 40 divided by 4. I have 10 plus 1.5, 11.5. I'll take out 2 inches from it. So if you're making yours a bit longer than your knee point, you're going to mark 2 inches above your knee before you insert this measurement. But the skirt is above the knee, so I'll just take out 2 inches from my hip and I'll connect. So from the waistline, I'll connect to the hip, and from the hip point, I'm going to connect this all the way to the lower part of my pattern this way. So after I'm done connecting this, we'll be cutting this out and also marking the dart at our waistline. But before that, I'll just go ahead and I will use my marker to outline my pattern from the upper part all the way to the lower part of my pattern this way. Then we are going to go ahead to cut out this pattern all the way to the end of my pattern paper. So after I'm done cutting this, I will be marking the dart. So to mark your dart, you're going to place your tape and you're going to mark your nipple to nipple divided by 2, starting from the closed part. And I'll take this all the way down. So for my dart, you can use 4 inches dart or 6 inches dart. So I'm not a fan of dart on the skirt, and I'll be using 4 inches for my dart, and I'll just go ahead to connect. So after that, I'll just go ahead and mark ½ inch at both sides of my dart, and I will be connecting it to the end. So this is that extra 1 inch we marked before marking our sewing allowance. So my skirt pattern is ready. So to cut the back, you're going to be adding a zipper allowance to the front part of your skirt. That is, after using this to cut out, you're going to add like 1.5 inches or 2 inches for your zipper allowance. So before cutting it out, I went ahead to cut out or mark out my zipper allowance, so that I'm going to use one pattern paper to cut it out at once. So here is my pattern to cut for the back. This is my zipper allowance. So if I want to cut out for the front, I'll just go ahead to fold it. So with this, we have come to the end of today's tutorial. Please don't forget to hit on the subscribe button and also join us in our sewing video. Thanks.